debate the ongoing situation in Gaza, and to react to that interview, I'm joined by Mehdi Hassan, the CEO of Zateo, and by Jonathan Conricus, the former Lieutenant Colonel and IDF spokesman, now a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Mehdi, you were listening there to the former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. What was your reaction?
I mean, what's my reaction going to be other than to say more of the same? Just so many lies, demonstrable lies. You challenged them on a few of them. This idea that the war ends tomorrow if the hostages are released has been is a nonsense proposition that a lot of Israeli military officials no longer believe in. The deal is on the table. Hamas has now accepted Netanyahu's terms of a partial release deal, which they didn't want to accept. But the Israelis said that was our idea. And now Israel's own military chief of staff, Piers, is telling Netanyahu, take the deal. If you carry on with this war, it doesn't make the hostages any safe. That's what the Israeli military chief of staff is saying. We know that time and time again, there has been an option to end this war, have a complete hostage release, have a permanent ceasefire, not a temporary one. And yet the Israelis don't want to do it. Netanyahu has made it very clear. If they release the hostages, we're still going into Gaza City. We're still taking this over. As you pointed out, Smotrich and many other ministers have said that it doesn't matter. The hostages are not the priority. Taking back Gaza, destroying Gaza, cleansing Gaza. To quote the Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister of Israel, that is the goal. So many other lies he mentioned. He talked about a 2-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio. Not true. Israel's own military intelligence database last month, it was leaked, showing that 5 out of every 6 Palestinians they kill are civilians. One of the highest civilian death rates in the modern warfare. You have to go back to Rwanda, Piers, in the 1990s to find a death rate that high for civilians. It's one of the reasons why people are saying this is a genocide. As you said at the start of this segment, the International Association for Genocide Scholars passed a resolution on Monday saying that what Israel is doing in Gaza meets the legal definition of a genocide. Only 1 in 3 Americans doesn't think it's a genocide. The IPC says it's a famine. Famine, genocide. We need to stop the gaslighting.
Jonathan Conricus, welcome back to Uncensored. I don't disagree that Hamas should release all the hostages. Of course they should. Shouldn't have taken them to start with. But I vehemently disagree with Naftali Bennett's framing that simply ends everything, because nobody seriously believes that is the case for the reasons that Mehdi just articulated.
Yeah, hello, Piers. Good to see you again or hear you. Well, whether you believe it or not is maybe important, but at the end of the day, I very much believe in that as well. And I think that it's very simple to go back to the situation on October the 6th and take stock of the situation then. There were no Israeli soldiers fighting in Gaza, and there was no famine or any of the other falsehoods that Hamas propagandists are spreading and the other lies that are being told every day in international media. The situation was that we were on our side of the border and Hamas and ordinary Palestinians were on their side of the border. What changed the situation was Hamas's attack on Israel. That is why we find ourselves now fighting almost 2 years of war, almost on 7 fronts. And it's going quite good on the other fronts. And I'm sure that many people in the Hamas, Qatari camps like Mehdi and others aren't happy with the fact that Israel stubbornly, annoyingly is able to withstand the international avalanche of pressure, the pressure campaigns by biased and corrupt UN organizations, this and that new institution or whatever scholars that are lending what's left of their credibility to dubious reports done without due process, with parts of their participants voting without having any possibility for people who think differently to raise their voice, and then having that report as if it's, gospel descend upon people and picked up and parroted in international media. And I'm sure that many people around the world are frustrated with the fact that we are still here. We still intend to defeat our enemies. And yes, I agree, we are not doing it in the swiftest way, and I would have wanted us to have done it swifter and better. I would have wanted all of our hostages to be back. But to be very clear, if Hamas lay down their weapons, and if we get our hostages back and Hamas is dismantled from governing the Gaza Strip, I have absolutely no doubt that the war would end in that instance, and there would be no Israeli claims or ideas or escapades or anything else that you might quote fringe elements in Israeli society. It wouldn't happen. We would go back to minding our own business.
But hang on.
Which
All
would
right,
be
Jonathan,
to live and to prosper in our homeland.
But hang on a second. The fringe members of society do not normally include the finance minister of the government.
Gaslighting.
You know, Smotrich is the current finance minister of the Israeli government. He's not a fringe member of society.
An electorate, democratically elected, but he represents an electorate which is on the extreme sides of Israeli politics. I perhaps shouldn't belittle and call them fringe, but it is an extreme part of Israeli society. But if you look at what other parts, the majority, if you look at what hundreds of thousands of Israelis, left, right, and center, are out demonstrating and saying is, we want our hostages back, we want the war to end, and the moment we get our hostages back, then the war ends. And another very important thing, which of course Mehdi represented very poorly, was that there is no deal for all of the hostages. The current waiting is for Hamas to say, okay, we agree to hand over all of the hostages. Currently, what we have on the table is 10 live hostages and half of the murdered hostages, and that isn't good enough. We don't want Hamas to have any live hostages that they can have, because that means that the war continues, that means that the suffering will continue, and that is not what we want.
Okay, Mehdi.
I can't believe that, 23 months into this, I'm still having to come on these shows and fact-check this kind of nonsense propaganda from pro-Israel people. As you pointed out,
in a position to fact-check.
They are on the record. Orit Strouk. They are on. Yeah, I can actually fact check. Let's give some facts. Bezalel Smotrich has said very clearly the hostages are not the priority.
You're not the representative of
the
fact,
settlements minister.
Hassan.
Can I speak without being interrupted?
Let him speak,
Jonathan. You had a chance.
Jonathan,
you had a chance for your propaganda. I didn't interrupt you.
Was quiet.
I will interrupt you for the next 20 minutes.
Jonathan, he allowed you to speak without interruption. Let Mehdi do the same.
Fine.
You can come back in and lie again in a moment. I'll give the facts to the viewers. The finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said very clearly that the hostages are not the priority. Ben Gvir has said a similar line. Orit Strouk, the settlements minister, said recently, we have to go into every area, even if the hostages die, even if they're unsafe, we have to do it. They have made that very clear. Gallant, the former defense minister, said Netanyahu was sacrificing the hostages. The hostages' families went to the homes of the Israeli cabinet just 9 days ago. They protested outside the government's homes and said, you are sacrificing our children on the altar of eternal war. Those are the words of the hostages' families, not the former IDF spokesman, Piers, who you've brought on to lie on behalf of the Israeli military. So many lies he told there in that statement that he just gave this long rant. He doesn't want me to speak now, obviously, because the fact checks will hurt him. Again and again, they have said the hostages are not the priority. And this idea of fringe figures, as you said, Piers, Bezalel Smotrich is the finance minister. He said in May of this year, we are disassembling Gaza. We are turning it into piles of rubble. We are destroying the Gaza Strip. We are there to conquer, cleanse and remain. Those are the words of Smotrich. By the way, on the same day, Piers, Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, put out a tweet saying, Bezalel, you have spoken the truth. You show leadership. So this is the entire government. It's not just the entire government. It's the country. A majority of Israelis say they want Palestinians expelled from the Gaza Strip, according to every poll. This is not a fringe view. This is the Israeli government. This is Israeli society. And for Jonathan to say, I'm in the Hamas camp, come on, Jonathan, get some new lines. I'm not in the Hamas camp. I've never defended Hamas on this show once. Piers knows that. Although you come on this show to defend an Israeli military you were part of and spokesman for. You were part of an Israeli military that's being investigated at the ICJ for genocide. You're part of an Israeli military that was indicted at the International Criminal Court for war crimes and crimes against humanity. You're part of an Israeli military that the International Association of Genocide Scholars have said is a genocide. You're part of a military. You're part of a military that's being investigated by international courts. You're part of a military.
Well, I think, okay, let me jump in.
No, hold on, I'm finishing my point, Piers.
Jonathan, let him finish and I'll come to you.
You're part of a military that has been investigated for sexual violence and rape against Palestinians. Did that happen on your watch? Did you sign off on what the UN says is sexual and gender-based violence?
Let me ask Jonathan a question. Okay, Jonathan.
A military that bombed a hospital last week, Jonathan.
Okay,
your military bombed a hospital.
Let me ask Jonathan an IDF question.
Bombed a hospital.
Let me ask Jonathan.
Only a sociopath would defend that.
All right, let me ask Jonathan a question, which is, as a former IDF man and spokesman, it is reported that behind the closed-door overnight meeting, IDF's Chief of Staff, Major General Ayal Zamir, vehemently opposed a Gaza City takeover, which he has repeatedly warned would endanger the lives of his soldiers and the remaining hostages held by Hamas. That was the Times of Israel reporting that. Are you not concerned as a former IDF man that the guy who's the Chief of Staff of the IDF right now thinks this is a disastrous policy in the making?
Yeah, so this is the first time in the program that we're actually talking something that's grounded somewhere close to facts, not all of the nonsense that Mehdi was spewing out. And by the way, I'll answer the question, Piers, but by the way, Mehdi, there's an open position.
Deal with the Smotrich quote.
No, you've been misrepresenting, cherry-picking.
No, don't talk over each other, Mehdi. Let Jonathan respond.
Cherry-picking anything.
Let him answer my question.
We conquer, cleanse, and remain in Gaza. No, that's the factual quote.
Right, please let him answer my question.
Which Netanyahu agreed with.
All right, Jonathan, answer my question, please.
I'll answer the question. So, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir is an excellent officer. He's the chief of staff of the IDF, and he's been leading the IDF with quite significant successes against Hezbollah, against the Iranians, and he is leading the IDF in our war, our very just war against Hamas. I'm very happy that there's a debate and that's an ongoing discussion between the military echelon and the democratically elected echelon in Israel. I'm not so happy that it's out in the open, but I am aware that it's happening. And I would say that what I read of the reported statements, which I have from pretty reliable sources they're more or less accurate, maybe not really the tone and the intensity, but a lot of it is accurate. What I read is that the military, very correctly, is asking of the government, what is the end state here? And government, please tell me what you intend for things to happen once we actually go in and fight Hamas and kill them in their tunnels and take out the remaining parts of the leadership and actually get the military part of the job done. And I think that's a very good point made by the IDF, because that is clarity that is needed. And until that is said and stipulated by the government, I think that it's good that the IDF, as a military in a democracy, is telling the elected democratic leadership that, well, I will execute the orders that you give me. Here are the consequences, and I wish for you to tell me what the desired strategic end state is. And that's exactly what a military is supposed to do in combat. And I think that now the ball is in the court of the government, where they will have to stipulate clearly and to a certain extent persuade the military and everybody serving.
Well, again, it's been reported
what exactly the end goal is.
All right, it's been reported again by the Times of Israel that during this 6-hour Israeli Security Cabinet hearing last night, that Netanyahu rejected the general's push to hold a vote over the current ceasefire deal on the table, which could see half of living hostages freed and lay the groundwork for a permanent end to the war. Now, Mehdi, what is also emerging is that there is a belief by Netanyahu that the reason he is being so gung-ho about continuing with this is that President Trump has urged him to finish the war in Gaza with full force. What should we read into that?
Yeah, I think we should read into that Donald Trump is 100% behind Netanyahu, as some of us warned he would be. I think there were some people who thought that there would be some daylight between Trump and Netanyahu, that Trump would somehow be better on Gaza than Biden and Harris were. And that's, as I've told you before, Piers, your pal Donald is full on the ethnic cleansing, the ridiculous Gaza Riviera plan, allegedly involving Tony Blair and Jared Kushner at the White House, outrageous open plans for ethnic cleansing, all signed off on by Donald Trump, who said earlier this year that Palestinians will have to leave Gaza and not come back, which is the definition of ethnic cleansing. That is what Israel and the American government are planning and cooking up for the people of Gaza. It's why the world has now turned belatedly against Israel and on this genocide, because it's so brazen what they're doing in terms of the man-made famine, in terms of the ethnic cleansing, all of this stuff. And, you know, the hostage canard keeps being put forward. Jonathan said earlier, oh, it's a partial deal. Yeah. That's what the Israelis wanted. The great irony is Hamas wanted a permanent deal, all the hostages for an end to the war. Netanyahu said no, partial deal. Hamas agreed to that too, so they keep moving the goalposts because he doesn't want to end the war, Piers. Matthew Miller, Biden's former State Department spokesman, said recently that when he spoke to Netanyahu last year, Netanyahu said openly, we're going to be fighting for decades in Gaza. He wants this war to continue for his own reasons, for the ideological reasons of his cabinet allies. And the military, you know, the Israeli military has now come to its senses saying this is not helping. This is the same Israeli military that has committed multiple war crimes. I mean, Jonathan talked earlier about, you know, what the purpose of combat is. He said he was a proud IDF man. He's proudly part of a military that last week bombed a hospital not once but twice. A double tap strike, according to CNN, triple tap strike, killing emergency responders, journalists, aid workers in front of our eyes. That is his glorious military. It's an Israeli military which, according to Dr. Nick Maynard, Piers, who you know, British doctor, I interviewed him last month, he said he treated Palestinian teenagers in his hospital in Gaza over the summer who were shot in the testicles, multiple children shot in the testicles by Jonathan's military, the same military that killed 15 paramedics in April and then just buried them with their ambulances in the sand. They were buried in the sand by the Israeli military in April. They lied, the Israelis. They said, oh, the lights were off. We didn't know who they were. Hamas were firing. Turned out all to be a lie. You know what the Israelis did, Piers? They fired the deputy commander. That's it. Nobody went to prison. No one was charged. They murdered 15 people. That's the military that Jonathan's come to defend. The most immoral military right now in the world that is bombing hospitals in front of our eyes.
Jonathan?
Yeah, it's, it's various levels of ridiculous. But listen, Mehdi, there's been a job opening. Israel finally got rid of Abu Ubaidah, a very prolific and well-to-do Hamas
You've really got to get better with your Hamas propaganda. You're a racist,
small man.
genocidal, war criminal.
Man.
You support war criminals. Well, you're trying to put a target on me? Are you and Elon Levy trying to put a target on me? Are you trying to put a target on me? You keep saying I'm Hamas, and you support killing Hamas.
You've done it with Elon, and it won't work with me, little Mehdi. Little Mehdi, you've done that shtick with Elon, it doesn't impress me. But I'm telling you is that if you improve your Arabic just a bit,
you keep saying I'm Hamas based on nothing.
If you improve your Arabic just a bit, I think you are well on track to become a very prolific spokesperson for Hamas.
Your troops engaged in sexual violence against Palestinian women.
Abu Ubaidah.
You're being investigated in the International Criminal Court.
Touting Hamas's
you are part of an army that is committing
you're,
genocide, Jonathan.
Mehdi, you are touting Hamas's propaganda lies. You are regurgitating things from April and from September.
The genocidal Israeli military.
Let me jump in. Jonathan, let me jump in, please.
Israeli military.
All right.
And now you want to kill every journalist that speaks out against you.
Yeah,
you
Jonathan.
killed 5 journalists last week.
Jonathan,
now you want to kill me.
But I think you would do an excellent job of replacing Abu Ubaidah.
Your military killed 5 journalists.
Let me ask a question,
and you're doing a great job. And you're doing a great job as Julius Streicher.
All right, let me ask a question because nobody can hear either of you. Nobody can hear either of you.
That's how history will remember you.
Let me ask you, Jonathan. Jonathan, about the incident. Jonathan, let me speak. About the incident that Mehdi's alluding to.
He doesn't want to talk about the hospital.
I'm just about to ask him about the hospital. If you let me do my job. Let me please ask you a question and do my job. So, Jonathan, the incident that Mehdi's alluding to, the double tap attack on a hospital which killed 5 journalists. This takes the total of journalists to over 200. There are now journalists all over the world who are protesting about this. People from CNN, from Reuters, from AP, from every serious news organisation in the world, saying that there is a mini genocide going on with actual journalists in Gaza, and that the only reason for this, the deliberate systematic attacks on journalists, is because Israel does not want people reporting on what is actually happening there. I know you agree with me, because you said it many times, that Israel should allow the international media in to do their jobs. But so far, they're not doing that. They're only allowing in certain friendly journalists embedded with the IDF to report what they want them to report. But until there is free, unfettered access of journalists into that region to report on this stuff, there is a belief that Israel is going about now deliberately and systematically killing Palestinian journalists to silence them. What is your response to that?
Yeah, that belief is wrong, and I have a few things to say. First, about the horrible, tragic mistake at Nasser Hospital. That is not what I envision in terms of Israeli operations. That is a tactical mistake by forces on the ground that saw a camera on top of a building, assessed that the camera was operated by Hamas, because Hamas has been operating cameras from all civilian buildings, including from hospitals, in order to monitor the troop movement of Israeli troops and then to detonate IEDs or otherwise to direct combat activity against Israeli troops. And that is why when Israeli troops saw that camera and other activity on top of that building, they engaged. Regretfully, 5 journalists, some of them working for international media outlets, were killed. That is not a desired outcome. That is a mistake, and that should not happen on the battlefield, full stop. 6 terrorists were also killed in that attack. When I spoke with 6 Hamas known operatives were killed. When I spoke with people in the IDF, my questions were actually about the second strike, which we saw live on an Arabic network, which I agree looks horrible, should not happen, and is something that I'm waiting for the IDF to investigate and to present findings and to say this is why the mistake happened and these are the steps that we have taken in order to rectify it. And I believe that the IDF will do that. And I believe that this is not what the IDF was seeking to achieve, because it was very clearly aid workers and others that were trying to rescue people that were wounded from the first engagement. So this was not intentional. This was a battlefield mistake in a chaotic or very difficult combat environment of troops that are under fire from civilian buildings where the enemy uses hospitals and schools and mosques and houses in order to fire from. This is the reality in Gaza made by Hamas, which we many times gloss over. No, as I said, they were from that. But first of all, Hamas has fired from the Nasser hospital several times in the past, and Hamas has been using cameras from various buildings, mosques, schools, and hospitals in Khan Yunis, in Gaza, in Rafah, in all of the Palestinian villages and cities, and that is why the IDF thought that the cameras that they saw were linked to Hamas. But I'm saying it very clearly, that was not the intended outcome.
Mehdi?
Can I respond, Piers? Yeah. So on this hospital attack, let's just be very clear, because so much gaslighting going on here. First of all, I'm old enough to remember October 2023 when the world went mad to suggest that Israel would ever attack a hospital. We were told for months Israel would never attack a hospital. Now they proudly attack a hospital and try and justify it with nonsense justifications. We attacked it because there was a Hamas camera on the roof. First of all, it wasn't a Hamas camera. It was a Reuters camera. Reuters already gave the Israeli military their positions. There were no Hamas cameras on the roof. It's a ridiculous new phase of Israeli propaganda to say it was a Hamas camera justified killing 20 people, which was insane. Okay, let me speak. If you stop interrupting, then I'll deal with that lie. You already said it. You said there was
some... Let Mehdi respond,
no, you're lying.
Hamas terrorists.
You're lying. I never get through a single answer on this show.
Let Mehdi respond.
6 Hamas operatives were not killed. You claim they were killed. No evidence has been provided to the international media that there were 6 Hamas operatives there. In fact, the 6 photos that were released, two of them were killed the day before. One of them was a well-known local firefighter who Israel had already dealt with. They were not 6 Hamas operatives who were killed in that strike. As for it being a mistake, how can it be a mistake, Piers, when it was a double? Can you shut up so I can finish a sentence?
It doesn't make it true.
Piers, am I going to get to speak on this show?
Jonathan,
you're just going to let one person speak all the time?
But I mean, if you're going to lie and you're going to expect me to
sit there... Well, you both accuse each other of lying all the time.
Let Mehdi respond,
then you can respond
back. And the world
back.
can see that... Jonathan, we're on Piers Morgan. I get to speak. We're not in Gaza. You don't get to kill me as a journalist. I get to speak here and point out that the journalists were killed in a double-tap strike. There's no way you can call that a mistake.
You do in life
he can't shut up, can he, Piers?
The only thing you do in life is lie and take money from the
I'm going to keep speaking and make my point. Like I said. All right, let me know, Piers, when I can speak.
Jonathan, please let him respond.
Because he won't shut up. I need to be able to make a point.
No one can understand you when you talk over each other.
6 Hamas operatives were not killed.
Mehdi, finish your point.
6 Hamas operatives were not killed. I barely started it. 6 Hamas operatives were not killed. Israel claims they were killed. It's been debunked. 20 people were killed, including 5 journalists. It couldn't have been a tragic mistake, as Jonathan claims, because it was a double-tap strike. The Israeli media have reported that the Israeli military did it deliberately. In Israel, in Hebrew, they're not saying it was accident. They said it was a coordinated attack. A double-tap strike. How do you explain a second strike 9 minutes later? There is no mistake. It's what Boko Haram, ISIS, Al-Qaeda do. It's deliberately to kill emergency responders. 972, an Israeli media organization, says it is now standard procedure for the Israeli military to do double-tap strikes. Last summer in Mawasi, the New York Times has video of the Israelis doing a double-tap strike on Palestinian paramedics. You know what Israel said at the time, Piers? We will investigate this incident. Guess what? A year later, no investigation. No one was charged. No one was punished. They always say this to gullible interviewers in the West. Well, we're investigating this mistake. Not a single Israeli soldier has gone to prison for killing anyone in Gaza since October 2023. You'll remember, Piers, I said that to Alan Dershowitz on your show. I remain to be fact-checked. It is true. Nobody went to prison for killing 15 paramedics in April. Nobody went to prison for the Mawasi double attack last summer. No one will go to prison for killing 20 people in this hospital. Jonathan and his military love to do war crimes, and no one holds them to account.
Jonathan?
Nonsense. Israeli officers have been
Who's
removed
gone
from
to
their
prison?
positions.
Jonathan, who's gone to prison? Who's gone to prison?
Israeli
you said
soldiers,
nonsense, Jonathan. Who's gone to prison? I was right.
I said
You're
nonsense,
wrong.
which is everything that comes from your mouth is either Hamas propaganda or
Mehdi, let him answer.
And
Name the person who's gone to prison.
He's
not answering. Name the person who's gone to prison. You and Alan Dershowitz cannot name a
understand what he's saying.
Israeli soldier who has gone to prison.
Mehdi,
Let me hear him what he has to say.
IDF soldiers have been disciplined and sent to military prison for misconduct, and there are
not
still
a single
open investigations.
Not a single Israeli soldier has gone to prison for killing a Palestinian since October 2023.
By the
not
military
one.
advocate general about
None.
yes, they have. I don't remember the name, but I know
You're lying.
of several
Anyone
Israeli
can Google
soldiers.
it right now.
No,
Jonathan Conricus is lying to you.
You can Google.
In April, 15 Palestinians
you can
were
say
killed.
whatever you want. You can continue
no one went to prison.
To make
It's a
up
fact.
half
Google
truths
it. Sky News has the story.
And
Sky
sprinkle
News has the
lies
story.
as much
We're
as
on
you
YouTube,
want.
Jonathan.
I know
People
for
can
a fact,
Google that you're lying
I know
right
for a
now.
fact that Israeli soldiers
Sky
have
News
been
investigation,
disciplined.
April
Even
2025.
sent,
15 paramedics killed.
Mehdi,
Not a
for
single
someone who
soldier was
complains
charged.
about being interrupted,
Mehdi, you
sure
don't
are
like it when he
interrupting a lot.
interrupts you, Mehdi. Let him
Yes,
speak.
I am interrupting, Jonathan.
Yeah,
I
but
am
let him
interrupting
speak. You don't
Jonathan.
like it when he does it.
You
So
sure
I'm going to
interrupt
fact
a
check
lot.
your lies. That's how it works, Jonathan. That's how it works,
you're not
Jonathan.
in a
You don't get
position
run
to
your mouth
fact
here
check
and kill
anything.
journalists here.
You're a mouth for hire. You're a paid propagandist. Who are you to fact check anything?
The viewers are fact checking.
You are a mouth for hire with no moral tethering in the world.
Go
You're
on
a
Sky
mouthpiece
News.
for Hamas
Go on
and for
Sky
Qatari
News
money.
website right
Who are
now.
you to fact check anybody?
April 2025.
Mehdi, you are a paid
April
mouth.
2025.
You're a
Sky
paid
News did the
mouth in a
investigation.
suit. Who
April
are you to
2025.
fact check anybody?
April
Who are you to
2025,
fact
Jonathan.
check? You have no legal
April
standing. You have no
2025,
moral
Jonathan, killed
standing.
15
You have no
paramedics.
factual standing, Mehdi.
April 2025.
The last time you
Google it.
visited anywhere
Guys are
near
on
a
Google,
war
April
zone
2025.
was maybe 20 years
I'm
ago.
not
You realise
Palestinian
nobody
Jews
can
in Gaza,
understand a
Jonathan.
word you
Can't
guys are
just
saying,
shoot me.
right?
I
I mean, you
get to
do
speak.
realise that.
Who are you to fact
Well,
check,
they can
Mehdi?
see
You
you.
are a
Do you
paid
realise when you
propagandist.
both talk at the
Nothing
same
more.
time, nobody can hear either of you? You realise that, right? I mean, we all
Piers,
understand.
You should have got him to stop
Everybody
interrupting for the
understands that
entire
when
show
you
then,
both talk
shouldn't
at
you?
once, nobody hears you. So I don't understand why you can't just take
Well,
it
you
in
can
turns.
both sides it, Piers, as
you
usual
both, you both find the others
very clearly
interrupting.
that Jonathan spent the
Well,
entire
you both hate the other one
segment
interrupting you, then you both do it
that,
yourselves. Why don't you
And
try
Piers,
and
who did all
practice
the
what you
interrupting
preach,
for the
the
first
pair
half
of
of
you?
the show? Be honest.
Huh?
Piers, who did all the interrupting for the first half of the
Piers,
show? Be honest.
Everyone
I think if we actually add
Are we
up
going
now
to
the
listen
number of
to the Qatari
interruptions, Mehdi,
mouthpiece?
you're right up there with Jonathan.
Now, you don't get to start at the end. Well, you don't start at the end, Piers. I'm reacting,
even more
remember?
than that, Mehdi. Yeah, no, you're not reacting. You're instigating, and you are a
You
mouth
just want to
that
silence
is
me,
being paid
like you
by
silence every
various
journalist
sources.
in Gaza. You kill journalists to silence them. You can't handle people.
represent
You can't handle the fact
nothing.
you can't
represent
kill me.
Sharia. You represent
you want
a
to.
hatred of Western society.
Right, Jonathan, let me ask you a question.
represent
All right,
dubious
I
am Western,
clandestine
you racist.
interests.
Let me ask
You
you a
racist
question,
piece of
Jonathan.
shit.
Let me
I am
ask you a
Western.
question, Jonathan.
I am Western.
Let
I'm
me
born in the
ask
West.
Jonathan a
What was
question,
the question,
please.
Piers? I
Let
can't
me
hear because
ask a
there's
question,
born in the
please.
West.
screaming.
Please. Otherwise, I'll just stop it. It's pointless.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jonathan.
what a waste of time this is.
Jonathan, I want to ask you a question,
Piers.
I
Jonathan.
thought I was coming on to debate John Spencer.
I'm listening.
Not this ridiculous war criminal.
Yeah, you're ridiculous, Mehdi. A small man far away from action who represents nothing.
But I'm not
That's
a war
what
criminal.
You are.
You're the one who's in a military that's being investigated
No,
by the
and
International
neither am
Criminal
I.
Court and the International Court of Justice.
I'm
Okay.
a former
Yes, you are actually.
member
You're part
of
of
a
a military
that
that's being
actually stands for
investigated
something
at
and
the
defends
ICJ
something.
and the ICC.
Not just a mouth
you
for
were
hire.
You were a Julius Streicher
Not just a
propagandist for
mouth
the
for
Israeli
hire
military,
that's
lying
paid
about
by
every
I don't know
war crime
whom to,
that was
Okay.
committed.
slander Israel.
I'm going to leave it there, and you can carry on talking to each other. It's a bit pointless because no one can understand a word you're saying. I'm very glad you both set the right tone for not
You
interrupting
should have
each other.
moderated better, Piers.
But it's a shame because actually it was an interesting debate.
Well, you should have moderated better at the beginning, Piers, because I don't like being interrupted.
I'm
all
sure
the
the
time,
viewers
so
will
obviously I'm gonna hit
conclude
back,
that
so
I'm
maybe
the
you should have
problem
stopped, I
here.
guess.
I'm sure they will. But
I
thank you
think they
both.
will in the first
By the
half.
way,
Piers,
Piers,
I'm
when
sure
you
the viewers will
interrupt me every
My
conclude
invitation still
that the
stands.
endless interruptions
Piers,
by
my
both of you
invitation still
is my
stands.
Well,
fault.
every time I come on this show, I get interrupted by Dershowitz, by... I don't
Yeah, but you then keep interrupting them as well.
Maybe because you're so full
Yes,
of it, Mehdi.
that's what
Maybe
happens,
because
Piers.
the lies that you
can't
say
do
are so full
asymmetric
of it.
warfare. That's exactly
Maybe
what
because
happens.
you're so
I'm not
full
gonna,
of
I'm
it
not going to play
that
by one set of
even
rules
people that
where he
normally
gets
are
to
very
interrupt
civilized
me.
hear you tell lie after lie and have to respond to it because you
Civilized?
lie constantly.
You're part of a military
lie.
that rapes
you open
Palestinian
your
women.
mouth
Okay,
and
well,
you lie.
welcome
And
back
you're
to the
the last
viewers.
person on
It's
earth.
been
to
a
defend
military
nice
rapes
summer, and now we're
Palestinian
back
men
to
and
this.
women.
All right.
And
Thank you both very much. I
Piers,
appreciate it.
my invitation still stands, by the way, Piers. If we're still on, my invitation still stands for you to come to
Yeah, but
to
I have
Gaza.
here's
More
the
than
point,
happy to
Jonathan.
make
I have
that
no
happen.
interest in being led by the IDF to what you guys want me to see. My only interest is in allowing great international independent journalists from the major news organizations who are genuine war correspondents, which I'm not, to go and do their jobs. And the longer they're not allowed to do it, the more the stench of suspicion grows. That the reason for that is that the Israeli government does not want the world to see what is really going on. You know what my view of that is. I think you broadly agree with it. So me going in on some IDF in bed with you where you go, see, look, we're right. See, look, we're right. No, that's not how this works. I want the proper war correspondents
that's
who
not
know what they're
necessarily
doing
how it
to
would
go
be,
in and to be
Piers.
assessing
And-
independently without the IDF telling them what to look at. That's not how war correspondents
I
operate.
think you're setting the bar a bit too high, Piers. I think you're setting the bar a bit too high, and I think that isn't something that has happened neither in Mosul nor in Afghanistan or in other places of Iraq or in Syria. That's usually not what
Well,
happens
that is not
in
what
an
the
active
journalists
war
are
zone.
telling me. They're telling me they want to be allowed to do their jobs, and they've not been allowed to do it now
Well,
since this war
that's fine
started.
that's what they want, but I think we should start with at least coming in. And as I've said, I think you've been leading this battle and having quite an impact. And I think if anybody gets the credit for it, it probably should be you. And I would be more than happy to facilitate it.
Okay, I appreciate the offer. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Mehdi has sadly left
Thank
us.
you.
I appreciate you both coming on. Thank you.